There was one person from the very beginning of the 2020 presidential campaign, way back when I was still a very happy Democrat, that I said I would not vote for under any circumstances. And that woman is Amy Klobuchar. And oh, look at this. Now Amy Klobuchar is on the very short list of people who are being vetted to be Joe Biden's vice president. And it's kind of like I continue to look at the Democratic Party with absolute amazement that they could just keep bungling choice after choice after choice. So why did I declare before any of the primaries had even happened that I would never vote for Amy Klobuchar? Because Amy Klobuchar is a workplace bully. Full stop. She's a workplace bully, and I am going to prove it. Now, I was talking about this on Twitter the other day when this article originally came out, and lots of people were tweeting at me saying, Carlin, isn't it inconvenient that you seem to only all of a sudden care about workplace bullying? And my response to them was, well, no, it was actually not very convenient that I started working for a workplace bully back in like 2008. And it got me really interested in the topic because I had literally just started my doctoral coursework in industrial organizational psychology and proceeded to spend the next decade of my life studying workplace bullying to try to understand it. It was also not convenient for me when I took on the soul-sucking task, and I promise you it was actually a soul-sucking task. It's why part of what took my doctorate so long. A soul-sucking task of writing an entire dissertation about how young professionals cope with being the target of workplace bullying. I had to interview a whole bunch of young professionals for it. I had to collect a lot of data. It was awful to hear some of the things that have happened in the workplace, to experience it. It's just an awful thing. Workplace bullying is also something I consult on in the work I do in the real world. So if you think this is just a convenient timing issue, well, nah, man, I've got receipts. I've got receipts on this one. This has been an issue I have cared about for a very long time. Workplace bullying destroys people's lives. It destroys their careers. It kills their confidence. It keeps them in this constant state of fear and self-doubt because they've been gaslit by these toxic, crazy people over and over again. So we're going to talk about this, and I'm going to prove Amy Klobuchar is a workplace bully, and I'm going to give you a little bit of data so that you can understand what the phenomenon of workplace bullying looks like, because it is not just about, did someone say something mean to me at work? Maybe that's bullying, maybe it's not. That's not always bullying. So we're going to talk about that, but before we jump right into it, folks, I'm trying to grow the channel. If you appreciate the content I'm giving you today, maybe you've watched a couple other of my videos, go ahead, hit subscribe, turn on those notifications, give me a thumbs up, share it out to your friends who might be interested in it. I really appreciate it. All right, so let's talk about workplace bullying, shall we? Because this is like one of the most open secrets in the entire Congress, is that Amy Klobuchar is an absolute nightmare to work for. And this is one of those cases where, shocking, the mainstream media actually covered it. They haven't covered it in a long time, and they didn't really do their job by pushing this issue with her. But right when she was getting into the presidential race, they actually covered it. This article in the New York Times, which ultimately ended up endorsing Amy Klobuchar alongside Elizabeth Warren, which I didn't understand at all. But the New York Times wrote about it, how Amy Klobuchar treats her staff. Let's just take a look at the first couple opening paragraphs of this article. This is back in February 2019. Senator Amy Klobuchar was hungry, forkless, and losing patience. An aide joining her on a trip to South Carolina in 2008 had procured a salad for her boss while hauling their bags through an airport terminal. But once aboard, he delivered the grim news. He had fumbled the plastic eating utensils before reaching the gate, and the crew did not have any forks on such a short flight. What happened next was typical. Miss Klobuchar berated her aide instantly for the slip-up. And by the way, that's not actually typical. Like, that's a very easy mistake to make, and if it's a short flight, guess what? She's probably going to be able to eat pretty soon anyway. That's not typical to berate your aide for making a simple mistake. It's not even a smart thing to do. What happened after that was not. She pulled a comb from her bag and began eating the salad with it, according to 4 people familiar with the episode. Then she handed the comb to her staff member with a directive: clean it. And that's a power move. That's what workplace bullying at the end of the day is all about. It's about showing that you are in power and that you can make people demean themselves in your service. That is exactly what workplace bullying is about. Don't worry, that's not the only example I have. That's just one. The moment, an abridged version of what Miss Klobuchar recounted herself in a speech to fellow Democrats at the time, encapsulates the underside of life on the Minnesota Senators team. Detailed interviews with more than 24 staff members and internal emails reviewed by the New York Times. As Ms. Klobuchar joins the 2020 presidential race, many of these former aides say she is not just demanding, but often dehumanizing. Not merely a tough boss in a capital full of them, but a steward of a work environment colored by volatility, high-handedness, and distrust. The senator feared sabotage from her own team. And this is common with bullies too, is they get kind of like paranoid because it's all about control for them. It's about control and power. And so sometimes they can get a little bit paranoid thinking that they're losing that control and power. But let's find out what she did. In an email, she once raised the prospect of an in-house mole. She and her top confidants could complicate the future job opportunities of some staff members who sought to leave, former aides said, sometimes speaking to their would-be employers to register displeasure. And Ms. Klobuchar frequently suggested that her aides were preventing her from greater standing in Washington and beyond. We're becoming a joke, she wrote in one email about the contents of her Twitter feed, and it is making me a joke. So, by the way, what Amy Klobuchar is talking about doing with calling future employers and registering her displeasure with their staff so that they don't hire them, that's actually illegal. By the way, she could get sued. She could get sued for that. I don't know if they did, but that is 100% something she could get sued for. So those are just a couple of examples from the New York Times, but that's not all the examples by a long shot. Huffington Post, people. Harry Reid rebukes Amy Klobuchar for mistreatment of her staff. It turns out that Harry Reid actually privately rebuked Amy Klobuchar for how she was treating her staff, and this long history of it. BuzzFeed, which is basically trash, we all know BuzzFeed is trash, has this long article detailing some of the crazy things Amy Klobuchar has done. We're going to talk about those. Don't worry, we're going to get into those. CNN even covered this with Amy Klobuchar defending her treatment of her staff. And she says, if you're a boss, you have to have high standards. And that is what I have always had. And that doesn't mean it's a popularity contest all of the time, she says. And so I've had high standards for myself, high standards for my staff. Mostly I'm going to have high standards for my country. And then she goes on to say, when you're out there on the world stage and dealing with people like Vladimir Putin, yeah, you want someone who's tough. And that leads me to the crux of my argument, because for this story, we're actually going to look at a piece that I wrote for Forbes in February 2019 for all those people saying this is rather convenient timing. I've been talking about this for a long time. I've been talking about this way before the Trump rally. It was but a glimmer in my eye. Because remember, I didn't leave the Democratic Party until February 2020. I wrote this when I was still like, vote blue no matter who. And this is the argument that I was hearing so much of at that time is Amy Klobuchar is not a bully. She's just a tough boss. BS. We're going to talk about the difference between being a bully and being a tough boss. So let's read this article. Shortly after Senator Amy Klobuchar announced her bid to become the next Democratic nominee for president, horror stories began popping up detailing years of consistent abusive treatment of her staff. The reports contend that her reputation made it difficult to recruit someone to manage her presidential campaign. There was actually another story on this where Amy Klobuchar, when she first started running, was having difficulty recruiting people to her team because so many people knew that she was a horrible person to work for. The reports contended that her reputation made it difficult to recruit someone to manage her presidential campaign. In response, Klobuchar supporters argued that she was being targeted due to her gender and that a man in her position would be considered tough instead of toxic. And listen, man, like anyone who says that people like Amy Klobuchar particularly are being targeted just because of her gender and it's sexism and misogyny and all that bullshit, guess what, folks? You are actually setting up women to be a greater target of workplace bullying when you defend defend other women who do this. You want to know why? When men are workplace bullies, when it's the man doing the bullying, they tend to bully men and women about 50-50. 50% of the time men, 50% of the time women are going to be the targets. When it is a woman who is a workplace bully, she is going to bully other women 80% of the time. So every time you come out and say, it's just misogyny, she's just a tough boss, I don't even know why we're talking about this. Every time you do this, when it is a woman who is the workplace bully, what is going to happen is that you are going to cause more women to be the target of workplace bullying. Congratulations. Congratulations. And guess what? I'll even go one step further. You know who is most likely to become a workplace bully? Someone who has been bullied at work. When workplace bullying is actually, it perpetuates, it creates more bullies because typically, well, not all the time, but most often a bully is someone's boss. We learn how to behave from our boss. If our boss is a bully, then that's going to teach us to bully. And then when we have subordinates, we're going to pass that behavior along. So, you know, if you want to create a lot more women workplace bullies, keep defending crap like this. Keep defending it under the guise of misogyny. Ugh. Well, it certainly is true that assertive women are more likely to be viewed as bossy or unlikable than their male counterparts. That is true. I stand by that. Who engage in exactly the same behaviors. We can't assume that just because someone is a woman, it means that her behaviors towards her staff are being wrongly characterized when charges of toxicity are made. According to the Workplace Bullying Institute, 30% of workplace bullies are women. And according to a recent study, more than 2/3 of women have reported being the target of workplace bullying by, wait for it, a female boss. So how can you tell the difference between when your boss is being tough and when they've crossed the line into being a workplace bully, regardless of the gender they identify with? Where is the line? Here are some differentiators to consider. According to Bartlett and Bartlett, workplace bullying is defined, and Bartlett and Bartlett this is from a comprehensive literature review that was done of treasure trove of peer-reviewed research coming out of academic journals. Here, I'll even show you exactly what this is. We'll pull it up on the screen just for good measure. This is from Workplace Bullying, an integrated literature review. It is in a peer-reviewed journal, Advances in Developing Human Resources. This was back in 2011. Workplace bullying is defined as the experience of repeated and unwelcome negative acts, such as criticism and humiliation, occurring at your place of employment that is intended to cause fear, distress, and harm to the target from one or more individuals in any source of power over the target where the target has difficulty defending him or herself. Now, there's a lot to break down in that definition, but a key word to consider is repeated. This is really important. It is repeated. Workplace bullying is rarely a one-off experience. Rather, it is the experience of a combination of harmful behaviors over time. Those behaviors may have to do with work, such as constantly being expected to meet unreasonable deadlines, maintaining an unmanageable workload, having information withheld that impacts performance, and being pressured not to take advantage of benefits to which you're entitled, such as vacation days or reimbursements for expenses. These behaviors may also be personal attacks, such as being regularly humiliated or ridiculed, having gossip and rumors spread, being purposefully ignored or excluded from the group, or being the target of excessive teasing or sarcasm. And these behaviors could also be more severe, such as being shouted as the target of spontaneous anger or rage, or experiencing behaviors with the specific intention to intimidate. Although the range of behaviors that you might experience as a target of workplace bullying might seem confusingly broad, the thing that brings the experience together is that the toxic behavior occurs consistently over an extended period of time. So I'm going to say that again. And I'm going to give you an idea of some of the types of behaviors you can expect in workplace bullying cases in a second. But this is what I really want you to know. The thing that brings the experience together, here I'll even highlight it. The thing that brings the experience together is that the toxic behaviors occur consistently over an extended period of time. This is not one-off. This is not a couple times. What we're looking for, one of the things I'm looking for when I'm assessing if something is workplace bullying, is if the behavior occurs consistently over an extended period of time. Another thing I'm going to be looking for, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, is I also want to see that this is probably not being directed at just one person, because most often when it comes to cases of workplace bullying, the bully is not never, but almost never just directing it at one person. It's almost always at multiple people. This is actually just the really simple assessment that I use to try to get a sense of what is actually going on, what type of behaviors are we seeing, how consistent those behaviors are, what is the time period that these behaviors are occurring over. And you can see that it's actually separated into 3 different categories. The first is categories related to someone's job performance, the skills that they actually need to perform to be able to do their job. So we're going to look at things like information being withheld, being assigned work below your levels of competence, having your opinion ignored repeatedly, being micromanaged all the time, things like that. Now, those things by themselves occurring every once in a while are not workplace bullying, but when you put them together and the behavior occurs over an extended period of time, then it does start to get into that area. But most often, job-related tasks are also going to be coupled with personal things that are happening at the same time. So that's our next category here in the orange. We're looking at things like being humiliated or ridiculed at work, having key areas of responsibility removed, having gossip and rumors spread about you, people making insulting remarks about you, having hints that you should probably quit your job or go look somewhere else, having practical jokes being played on you, things like that. And then lastly, we have our last category, which actually tends to be the least common type of workplace bullying, which are more overt things. Things like being shouted at, being the target of spontaneous anger or rage, you having behaviors used directly to intimidate you, like doing finger pointing or people trying to take up space so you can't pass, things like that, or being the target of harassment and overt violence. Those things do happen. Of course, we never want to diminish those, but they actually are one of the least common categories of workplace bullying that I see. Most often, workplace bullying is going to fall into a combination of job-related tasks and person-related tasks. Let's keep going. A tough boss can have a bad day. They can be stressed out, have an outburst in a meeting, forget to give you something you need to do your job, snap at you when you're trying to explain why you're not getting the result that they want, make an unreasonable request that requires you long hours, or make an offhanded remark that might not have been their finest hour in retrospect. It crosses the line into bullying when those behaviors become standard operating procedure, when they occur every day rather than once in a while. So that's going to be, like I said, one of our key defining characteristics. Is this behavior repeated, and is it consistent over time? Tough bosses drive you to produce your best work. Bullies rule through fear. Former aide to ex-Senator Al Franken recalled an incident in which Klobuchar sent a young staffer to explain the senator's lateness, reportedly saying, "I'm supposed to tell you that Senator Klobuchar is late today because I am bad at my job." Again, it's a power play. That's all it is. You have to go demean yourself because I say so. Who benefits from forcing an employee to make a statement like that? Does it teach the employee a harsh lesson that will prompt them to be better next time? Or will it make them feel like nothing they ever do will be good enough? The motivation behind the action matters. There's nothing wrong with a boss expecting high-quality work from their team member. In fact, it's often held being accountable to a high expectation that will drive employees to go the extra mile and perhaps even surpassing what they thought was possible to achieve. But one can be held accountable to great expectations without being humiliated, ostracized, being made the butt of a cruel joke, or verbally abused. Part of what defines workplace bullying is that the target has difficulty defending themselves from consistent psychological attacks. So I'm going to say that again. Part of what defines workplace bullying is that the target has difficulty defending themselves to these consistent psychological attacks. If the expectation is that you must keep your mouth shut and take whatever your boss gives you unquestioningly, without standing up and defending yourself, particularly if it reaches the point where you dread coming into work every day, then you might be working for a bully. Tough bosses are strategic. Bullies are irrational. Tough bosses are tough because they are focused on achieving results, with the performance of the team taking priority over how people feel. And this is often something people get confused. They say, like, it's just a tough boss. They don't care about your emotions. Well, it's fine not to care about emotions, but what you should be caring about is, at the end of the day, the performance of the team. If you don't care about the performance of the team, that is actually one of the key differentiators between a tough boss and a bully. Tough bosses care about winning. They care about crossing that finish line, like Donald Trump, like victorious, winning. Don't you get sick of winning so much? That's what they care about, is winning. When we're seeing bullying behavior, though, oftentimes that bullying behavior is directly counterproductive when it comes to meeting the goal of winning. It just doesn't work. But that doesn't always translate into negative behaviors. A tough boss will go to bat for their team when it means the difference between success and failure, will roll up their sleeves when they need to dig in and get their hands dirty, and will even play the role of cheerleader when they think it will push the team across the finish line. Their actions are strategic and they get results. On the other hand, bullies care about power more than anything else. Sometimes this might go hand in hand with driving towards results, and other times these efforts will be directly counterproductive to achieving the goal. For instance, they may force their targets to work on trivial tasks rather than focus on the core responsibility of their job, or pile on the work to a level that it would be unachievable for even the most skilled employee. And they disrupt the cohesion of the team by specifically pitting some employees against others based on who are the favorites and who they are targeting. Tough bosses are tough on everyone. Bullies have specific targets and play favorites. When you work for a tough boss, they don't just have high standards for you. They have high standards for everyone, regardless of rank, experience, tenure, or title. There are no favorites. There are no targets. That means everyone is on the same level. It may not be the easiest environment to work in, but you know you're not alone. And I feel like, I don't want to speak out of hand, but I feel like they might have edited this article to take out some of the specific Klobuchar references that I made. Maybe I'm being conspiratorial. I mean, I wrote this article a long time ago. I don't really remember. But one of the things I distinctly remember about Amy Klobuchar is that she absolutely had defenders. She had people working for her that said, best boss ever. And she had a lot of people working for her saying, oh my God, this woman is a goddamn nightmare. And so for me, that's an indication that she absolutely had favorites. She wasn't being a consistent boss to everyone. She had her favorites and she had her targets. So that's what that says. Bullies are different. They don't target everyone with difficult behavior. Bullying is a power play, and they tend to target employees who are the most vulnerable and least likely to retaliate or confront the problem. But that doesn't mean their targets are underperformers. In fact, they can be very strong performers who may intimidate their boss, presenting a threat to their power. That's why there is a special focus on keeping them in their place. Of course, that means there will be some employees who will have a completely different experience with the bully in question. They may even love working for them because they don't experience the same bullying behaviors. If you find a range of experience with the boss in question, that can mean they've crossed the line from tough to toxicity. What should you do if you work for a workplace bully? When workplace bullying is reported, less than 20% of employers will provide help to the target, leaving them to fend for themselves. That means that if you find yourself working for a bully rather than a tough boss, your best bet is to find greener pastures. Go somewhere that you can be valued and appreciated. And not for nothing, but that's exactly what Klobuchar's staff has done. Between 2001 and 2016, she boasted the highest turnover rate in the Senate at 36% a year. And I'm going to show you that data in a sec. Of course, we can't know for sure if she's tough or if she's toxic because only those close to her have witnessed what's occurring. But if the existing reporting is accurate, she's walking a fine line at best. And I want to show you where that data came from. It actually came from Politico, the worst boss in Congress. New data are out that ranks lawmakers with highest staff turnover. This was back in 2018, so 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. We're just going to scroll down to the Senate. Highest staff turnover in the Senate between 2001 and 2016. Look who is right up at the top, Amy Klobuchar, 36%. 36% is an absurdly high turnover rate. Absurdly high. And I'll tell you what, when I started researching this way back in the day, I would talk to people who worked on the Hill. I would talk to people who, knew people that worked for Amy Klobuchar, and it was common knowledge, folks. It was common knowledge. Like, do not go to work for Amy Klobuchar because she is a nightmare to work for. So, is Amy Klobuchar a bully? Yup. Are the Democrats screwing up yet again by even considering putting her on the ticket? Yup. Will I do everything in my power to make sure that Amy Klobuchar never becomes president of the United States? You bet your ass I will. Because I'm sorry, women like her make it difficult for women like me who, I can be a little bit of a hard ass, but I'm not a bully. I treat everyone the same. Women like her give people like me a bad name. And when she goes around saying, "Oh, I'm not a bully, I'm just a tough boss. Don't you want a tough boss with Vladimir Putin?" You know what? Go to hell, Amy, because I've actually had to fix the people that people like you break. I've had to rebuild the confidence of people that have undergone bullying from people like you. I've had to rebuild the empowerment of people who've undergone your type of management and your type of leadership. It doesn't work. It destroys people. It doesn't only destroy people in terms of their career, it hurts them in terms of their everyday lives because you gaslight them into a place where they think that they are worth nothing. So if you want to vote for Amy Klobuchar, I guess go ahead if she ends up getting on the ticket. But I said from the very beginning that I would never vote for a ticket with Amy Klobuchar on it, and I mean it. Now, I'd already decided to vote for Trump. This is not even a big deal at this point. I wasn't going to vote for Biden anyway. But man, I really hope people who think that she's oh so wonderful go back and read some of these stories that the New York Times and Huffington Post and CNN, Washington Post, BuzzFeed, all these major media outlets were reporting this. And then all of a sudden it disappeared. And we never heard from it again. Because Amy Klobuchar is a woman, and to say anything against her is misogynistic, and we don't want to do that.